The Florida Gators transfer portal approach is one that I have a bit of an issue with.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free, whether it's in the podcast and on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening from home or wherever you may be listening, you may hear a little bit of a difference than usual because I am not even at an Airbnb anymore. I am in a hotel lobby in Mobile, Alabama, covering the Senior Bowl there. And so welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast and Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free. With us in the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Thursday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. And yeah, probably going to be some guests in this episode, not literally, but behind me, there's a door, people walking around. And like I said, busy. We're in a hotel right now. And by we, I mean me next to a Royal Street Market in Mobile, Alabama. So that's what we're doing here. I have not been back to the Airbnb in about 13 hours at this point. So cool beans. But the Florida Gators transfer portal approach is one that I have a bit of an issue with. And we'll talk about what it should have been, how it could have been fixed. But if you look at who they brought in at this point, there's 5 portal additions, right? One of them is a punter. And so not to say punters don't matter or punters aren't people. By the way, Jeremy Crawshaw, really good weekend so far, or really good week so far here at the Senior Bowl. Longest hang time of 5.72 seconds at the first day of practice, which has not been beaten yet. Second day looked really good as well. And he got in a lot of work after practice. He spent basically the whole media session at practice or after practice practicing more. But you brought in Tommy Doman from Michigan to replace him. And like I said before, I can't really have a strong opinion of a portal punter addition. That's just not something I can do. So we'll say you really had 4 transfer portal additions that we're going to talk about, and there was only one of those that I would classify personally as a truly good starter quality, SEC starter quality addition, right? Like I think that J. Michael Sturdivant is the only guy that we'll look at and we'll say the only truly good starter ad. A guy that's going to come in and be an immediate, significant contributor that is SEC starter quality. And I word it that way because I don't want it to go, oh, well, he's immediately going to get playing time. That means it's an SEC starter quality ad, because it's not, right? You can come in, get some playing time right away, and have it be not a great portal edition, not a starter quality portal edition. J. Michael Sturdivant is an SEC starter quality player, okay? And I do think that he's someone that is going to come in with DJ Lagway and find some relative success right away. We talked about J. Michael Sturdivant prior to his commitment to the University of Florida and prior to his true signing with the University of Florida. And I mentioned that I spoke to people at UCLA that talked about him as we missed that opportunity, basically. Like the people that I spoke to at UCLA were pissed because they feel that they miss out on maximizing the potential and maximizing the talent of J. Michael Sturdivant when he came over from Cal, that they were like, hey, we should have been able to put him in better position. We should have been able to find more success with him, and we didn't, and that's why he left. He's a good player. I've spoken to people at the Senior Bowl about J. Michael Sturdivant, and the general consensus of the people that I've spoken to are, he's a dude. Like, there's no other way to put it. He's a dude. He's a good football player. He's going to be productive. He's going to be really helpful for a guy like DJ Lagway. And that's why that addition is a fantastic one, okay? I'm not going to pretend that I hate it more than anything else. I'm going to say that addition is a fantastic addition of J. Michael Sturdivant because he's the kind of receiver that DJ Lagway needs. And remember, we've talked about this before where it's not so much just, he's a big-bodied receiver that's going to come in and contribute and be helpful for DJ Lagway, because DJ Lagway needs that with accuracy issues like we used to talk about with Anthony Richardson. But instead, we are talking about someone that is an aggressive downfield passing quarterback like DJ Lagway, which again, like that's not a knock at all. He's an aggressive downfield passer as your quarterback. And when you have those kinds of quarterbacks that are going to make riskier throws because he has the arm talent to make any throw you could ask for on the planet, when you have a quarterback that's going to make those kinds of passes and attempt those kinds of passes, you need receivers that can go and maximize that. So DJ Lagway does not need a big-bodied receiver because he's inaccurate. DJ Lagway needs a big-bodied receiver because he's going to make aggressive downfield throws, and he needs someone that can come away with that ball. He needs someone that he can throw a post to, and there's just one deep safety, and he could throw the post to, and he's going to win that. He needs someone where if you put man-to-man coverage on the outside, he could throw it up to that receiver and find some success right away. That's why he needs that kind of receiver, not because of the situation that we talked about in 2022 and prior to, where it's like, hey, well, Anthony Richardson couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if he was throwing the broadside of a barn. Instead, it's you've got an aggressive quarterback. You need to get a big-bodied receiver that you can trust to come down and make these catches. And again, like I said, J. Michael Sturdivant is someone that people have talked about and said he is a dude that UCLA wasted. And again, like I said, I spoke to people at UCLA, and they've said, we feel like we wasted him. And that pisses us off because he's a really good player. So J. Michael Sturdivant, fantastic addition for the Florida Gators. Then there's 3 other additions that we're going to talk about today, and I am less optimistic about. We'll talk about that when we get back with this episode of Locked On Gators. Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other, and an experience that I very well may never get to experience again because I'm a New York Giants fan, and they are bound to suck for probably the rest of my life, right? The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans is completely unmatched, right? You're not going to get that anywhere else in the NFL. In college, you'll get it, trust me. But in the NFL, you're not getting that anywhere else. This year, Game Time makes it even easier for you to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. Filters out the fluff, shows you only the best deal on great seats. Like I said, I went to go see the Knicks at the Wizards about a month ago at this point. Hell of a game. Hell of a deal that I got. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets at Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever it's in the podcast and on YouTube. The Florida Gators made 3 more transfer portal additions that we're going to talk about today. And we're not talking about them in order of significance or in order of anything else. We're just talking about them in the order that we're talking about them, right? And first up is quarterback Harrison Bailey. Quarterback Harrison Bailey came over from Louisville after trips to Tennessee for 2 years, UNLV for 1 year, and then Louisville for 2 years, where he was backing up quarterback Tyler Shuck, who is here in Mobile for the Senior Bowl and has looked pretty decent compared to the rest of the Senior Bowl quarterbacks who have not been awesome at this point. Pretty rough week for them, if we're being honest. But Harrison Bailey was a relative non-factor for Louisville. He did not play much up until the bowl game against Washington, in which he started in that game, got out a bit of film. And like I said, he's got a live arm, it looks like. He doesn't have much mobility, but he can probably keep an offense on schedule. He could probably keep an offense on task. And I do think that that's important. Okay, I'm not saying that every portal edition that's not a starter is a bad one. I was the one that was saying way back when the season ended that when you're looking for a quarterback in the transfer portal for the Florida Gators, you're not going to get a good one. Okay, don't forget, like, that's the thing that we talked about. You're not going to get a good transfer portal quarterback because you're not getting a guy that's coming to compete for a starting spot, because he's not going to win that, and that's not even an option for him. And like they said with Deshaun Purdy, where it's like, oh, like, I thought I had a chance to start. He didn't think that. Okay, he didn't. I'm going to be completely honest with you. From who I've spoken to, he didn't think that he had a chance to start. It's that other schools got involved and pulled him away. And then when he realized he couldn't go to those schools, kind of already destroyed the relationship that they had with Deshaun Purdy and the Florida Gators coaching staff. And so you missed out on that one. And at that point, again, like I said, like, Harrison Bailey would have been the best possible addition that the Florida Gators can make. He would have been the guy. Young, and ideally, again, he would have redshirted in 2025, back up in 2026, compete for the starting job in 27 and 28, and that would have been the best outcome, right? That would have been the ideal situation that you could have had. Instead, he left. From the time that he was gone, or from the time he was a Gator to the time he left, you missed out on many quarterbacks that, again, is to no fault of Billy Napier, no fault of this coaching staff. Okay? That's not a thing that you can really pin on them, in my opinion. So you got Harrison Bailey, who is unspectacular, we'll say. But if he can keep your offense on schedule, he's a fine addition. Then, and again, by then, I don't mean in order of the addition. I just mean in order of players we're talking about. There's Kofi Asare, UMass edge rusher, and I feel like I said this before he was a Florida Gator, that I wasn't a big fan of it. I didn't think he was an SEC starter quality player, and that he just isn't someone that moves the needle for me. I didn't think he'd be a contributor this year. I don't know if he'll be much of a contributor next year. From people I've spoken to, they've said, hey, he's got to put on a bit of weight to come play in the SEC. Okay. And I don't think anybody's surprised by that. We talked about, like, I don't think he's got the power to play the SEC right now and be a significant contributor. And before you lost Jack Piper, before you lost TJ Searcy, I was one that was going out here and I was like, hey, you need to go into the transfer portal and get an edge that can contribute right away and be a legitimate impact player for you, be a needle mover for you. The Florida Gators did not do that. They could have done that. They did not do that. And so even before you lost two significant contributors, I thought you had to go into the portal and get more. And I know there's going to be people in the comments, well, the coaching staff knows more than you do, and they didn't think they needed to go into the portal to get a starter. I don't care, man. I'm just giving you my opinion on things, and that's what you're always going to get from here. And I thought that you had to go get a starter out of the edge out of the portal. You didn't do that. We'll see what happens this year. One of us are going to be right about whether or not Kofi Asare is a good addition for 2025. One of us will be right. One of us will be wrong. No other way to put that one. And again, not to say he can't become a starter quality player. I don't think he would this year. But I'm talking about you needed to get a guy that can help you this year. And I don't think you did that. Okay? Kofi Asare could work out. We'll see. Next is defensive back Michael Caraway Jr. Michael Caraway Jr. from Southern Miss. I don't know why it's South Carolina, but from Southern Miss. Good athlete, good size for a DB especially, and has elite versatility. That's kind of it. Like we said before, like, I don't think he's a starter quality player here. I don't think that the staff thinks he's a starter quality player. And I want to make that clear as well. When I say that he's not a starter quality player, I am not implying that the staff thought he was a starter quality player. I don't think anybody was like, hey, who's a starter? Michael Caraway Jr. I think, and I've said this before, I think he was brought in to be a Triquez Bridges but worse. Or a Triquez Bridges but on a smaller scale. Because Triquez was brought in as a guy who was recruited as a safety at high school, moved to corner because of injuries, and was moving back to safety here in Gainesville. And when he moved back to safety, he started playing a lot better. Then he had to move to corner because of injuries, and he still played well. And the thought during the summer was, and he might be playing nickel. And then injuries happened, and he had to move, and things just didn't go according to plan. But I think that you can look at Michael Carraway Jr., say, hey, you played in a somewhat similar defensive system at Southern Miss, and you can come in and contribute in multiple spots. I think that's fine. I think that the depth there is a good move. My issue isn't, oh, hey, you went out and got depth players to be depth players. My issue is that I thought that the Florida Gators were in the Lagway window. Okay? Pro Football Hall of Famer just walked across me, and I thought that was pretty cool to tell you. But I thought, and I think that the Florida Gators are in the Lagway window, which means you got to go out there and add as many impact players as you can that are going to elevate your ceiling, that are going to make your football team a, I don't want to say national championship contending team, but I think you have a college football playoff roster, and you could have gone out there and improved it even more. And we could have been talking about, hey, well, now we're having a different conversation about what the ceiling of this team is and what the floor of this team is. Now that both of those are lower, if you ask me, both of those are lower for me. Michael Carey Jr. contributes, great depth. Kofi Asare, depth. Harrison Bailey, ideally never touches the football field. You didn't go out there and go and get high quality players that are going to improve your starters right now. That was my issue. You were in the Lagway window. You are in the Lagway window. This is where you go and you make the top of your team better, and that'll make the lower part of your team better. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Gators. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. And to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Gators, I wanted to talk about the should have been, right? Because again, my issue with the Florida Gators transfer portal approach is not, oh, you didn't go out there and get 20 guys. No, it's not, oh, you didn't go out there and just spend millions and millions and millions on superstar talent. That's not the issue. For me, the issue is that the Florida Gators realistically could have taken the approach in the transfer portal of you should have been able to add multiple immediate starter quality players. Wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive back, edge. You could have gone out and added multiple immediate starter quality players. My issue is that you didn't. My issue is that instead of adding starter quality players, you went out and added depth quality players, backup quality players for those roles. And yeah, you can do that. And I know people are going to go, oh, but if your starters get hurt, now you've got better depth. I understand that. But my point of view is if you brought in starter quality players to come in and compete for starting jobs, then you get one of two outcomes, right? You get your old starters become your new depth, right? If you bring in, a lot of people talked about Mose Phillips, right? If Mose Phillips came in and sent Jordan Castell. Not that I think he needs to be replaced. I'm just naming a safety. Jordan Castell. Mose Phillips comes in, sends Jordan Castell to the bench. Guess what? That means that your bench safety is now a starter quality player. He's just not as good as the guy ahead of him. Okay? If you bring in Mose Phillips and Jordan Castell beats him out, then guess what? You've now got two starter quality players at that same spot. So either your old starters become new depth or your new players are starter quality depth. That's how championship teams can overcome injuries. It's having starter quality depth throughout. So I don't have a problem with the Florida Gators adding depth players. My issue is that you could have genuinely gone out and gotten starter quality depth players. Starter quality players that are just going to compete for playing time there. That's more so my issue. It's that you could have gone out, receiver, you got a guy, right? But offensive tackle, you didn't even bring one in. Defensive tackle, you didn't bring one in. DB, brought in Michael Carraway Jr., clear depth player. A lot of people that I've spoken to, not on the coaching staff, but a lot of people that I've spoken to think, hey, why would you take him? Like, he's not a guy that's going to come in and be a significant contributor, which I do kind of disagree with. I think that, or not significant contributor, but I don't think he's an invaluable take. I don't think he's a valueless take. I don't think he's a bad take. I think he's a good depth player. but you could have gotten a starter quality DB, and trust me, you could have gotten starter quality DB to play that role. That would have made you better. Edge, you could have been better than Kofi Asare. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And I know, yep, coaching staff may have earned the right to shut me up with certain things about the evaluation of players in the portal. But like I said earlier, one of us is going to be right? And I will also say this, because this is always the response that we get, is I don't care, or I don't want to hear about roster spots. Roster spots mean nothing to me at this point. I get it. Roster limit changed. Scholarship limits changed. Absolutely. But, and I want to be just completely blunt with you here, this is football. This is actually, it doesn't have to be football. This is sports. Okay? When we talk about sports, when we talk about roster construction, when we talk about roster building, it's cutthroat, it's heartless, and it might be fickle, and it might be kind of douchey. But you got to say, hey, we have the opportunity to dump some of the bottom of the roster and replace it from the top with better talent. Some guys should be over-recruited. Look at the number of guys that have left the University of Florida in the past couple of seasons. I'll say the past 3 years, right? Billy Napier's tenure. Look at the guys that have left and gone on to be group of 5 players. Look at the guys that have left to gone on to be FCS players. That's not a Mullen recruit exclusive thing. Napier has had his fair share of recruits and commits and evaluations that have gone on to be nothing significant in college football. There are guys on this roster that you can replace on the bottom of the roster from the top with better talent. Starter quality talent. Make your team better. Again, I do think they've done a fantastic job of building a roster. I just think that this year they kind of squandered an opportunity to really take yourself to the next level. That's what bothers me about it. Some guys should be over-recruited, and I don't think they did that enough. Thanks for making Locked On Gators. I'm sure you're mad at me. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators football here from Mobile. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.